So I'm very pleased to welcome a new speaker, a keynote speaker, who's again not from the museum sector directly. Wietse Van Ransbeeck, can you please join me on stage? You are the co-founder and CEO of CitizenLab, an online platform to better engage younger audience and to get them kind of attached and enthusiastic about politics.
Yeah.
So if he can get people engaged about politics, you guys can surely do it about the arts. And just a quick word, because this is a pretty cool fact. You were nominated among Forbes 30 under 30 and politics. So definitely like young minds getting us inspired to engage younger audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, as introduced, it's going to be a bit different. I'm not going to talk here about museums in particular. I'm going to talk a bit broader about citizen engagement, mainly actually for the context of governments and citizens. I hope you're all still totally like fresh for a new session. I see some fists there and some, right, that's good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first explain what we do, CitizenLab. I'm going to tell you our story, how we actually got started, but I'm also very interested in hearing what you actually do to engage your audiences. All right, so what do we do? So CitizenLab, it's an e-democracy platform for cities, not only for cities, but actually for governments, and we make it easy to connect with the citizens of a local community. We want to do that in a very easy, accessible way, and that's also how we got started. So about 2 years ago, I am a citizen from Brussels. I was studying here at the VUB, and I felt like I had ideas for my city, I had ideas for Brussels, and I don't know how many people here are from Brussels. Not so many, all right. But then you know that there are quite some things that are going wrong here in the city. I had ideas to have green spaces here. I had ideas to have a swimming pool available, a park close to me. I wanted to do things about my street. I wanted to see more trees. I had a lot of imagination, a lot of ideas to our lovely city of Brussels to make it nicer. But I didn't know actually how I could communicate those ideas. And that is something that I'm definitely not the only one who has that problem. So then I started navigating through the landscape of what can you actually do to communicate your ideas as a citizen. We're talking here today about younger people. I'm 24 years old. And as you can imagine, on a Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock, I don't feel like going to my town hall meeting and spending the whole evening there. I don't know, has somebody here ever been to a town hall meeting? One person? Out of how many people? 400? So then you know that those meetings are actually, or then you don't know, but those meetings are really boring and they consume a lot of time and they're definitely not the best way to engage your citizens. And that is what we want to solve with CitizenLab. Make it easy, especially online, to communicate with your citizens and to engage your citizens. And then this frustration that I had, my source of inspiration actually, I start to validate this by looking at some numbers, and here you have some numbers. This is coming from a survey called Youthful Cities, a survey done in 2016. And as you can see, more than 50% of the European population, of the youngsters, they say like, yeah, I do want to participate. I do have ideas, I do want to have a say. But why do we have then this problem that citizens, they don't trust the government? 80% of them say that today they experience a lack of transparency. Well, the thing that we found out, and that's also what I was referring to earlier, is that our governments, they don't succeed at engaging the silent mass. Just take the first example there, physical activities, town hall meetings or neighborhood meetings. They cost a lot of time and money for both the citizens and for the governments. And in the end, you get to see the same 10, 20 people there. Often they're male, they're 50 years old or a bit older, and they're white. But then you also have other options. Of course, you can fill in a paper, you can fill in a survey, but you have no clue what is going to happen with your input. Another thing is you can start shouting on social media. That's often a good start, but you have no guarantee that you will be in a structural way be heard. And so that is the thing that we try to solve by being very pragmatic. We want to help and empower our institutions as much as we want to empower our citizens. So citizen participation made easy. We help citizens connect with the government, tear down all barriers to engage with with your city or with your local government, this 24/7 on any device. I'm going to give you some more explanation on how we do this. Today we work with about 80 governments all over the world. But one of the key learnings that we had there is, rather than just starting with an application and that you think that you're going to replace democracy, we try to understand how our governments actually work, which is already quite complex. So we try to design, together with them, participatory processes that are delightful for citizens, that are easy to understand. So actually, our job is a bit being a translator. We try to translate very complex processes of the government, because there are a lot of things to take into account, and try to make them very easy to understand and easy to engage with for citizens. So how do we decide which methods we use? So CitizenLab is actually a platform that serves for the government also as a toolbox of different participatory methods that they can use. And that is the first thing that is very important to understand, that when we started out, we thought, all right, this is going to be something radical. We're going to give a direct say to the citizens, and they're going to co-create every single solution of the city. That was the most pragmatic start. You have to understand that for every project that a city is undertaking, that you cannot give them this influence of co-creation. Some things are just, there's a lot of value in providing information when there are construction works in your street, in your neighborhood. Sometimes also a consultation to understand what are the pro and the contra arguments here. But it can go up to co-creation. Of course, we want to do this. That is what we love to do, create processes where citizens are also at the heart of the decision-making process. And then the second axis is actually the policy phase. That is also one of the things that we learned. We had a lot of cities that were initially super excited about doing this, and then they said, all right, literally we're going to reinvent our city. Then they collected ideas for about 3-4 months, and then they realized, damn, we've got 1,000 ideas, what are we going to do here? So that is something that we absolutely try to avoid right now. We're not going to do like those big communication campaigns and try to reinvent the city. No, what we want to do is on a more continuous basis, at any time that you can actually have a say as a citizen. That was also for us like how we started out. We want to create we don't want to replace the way that we work today, the way that politics works today, representative democracy. That is just the system that we use. We don't want to install a direct democracy, but this representative democracy that we have here, we want to especially enhance it, and at every single touch point, have the dialogue with the citizens. And that starts from actually, in the first phase, the agenda setting. As a citizen, you should be able to decide on what should a policy be made for, what is here the priority for our local community. It goes up to policy formulation, policy implementation, so concrete context, concrete projects that citizens can ideate together with the government on potential solutions, up to evaluation. So how does it work for citizens? The 3 actions that you take are, you can submit your proposals, you can comment on other proposals, give your pro and contra arguments, and then in the end you vote to communicate your preferences. And again, we do that with different methods. So it goes from generating ideas and posting ideas to set the agenda, up to when your voice is consulted on a couple of scenarios that the city is currently considering. And then finally, of course, also citizen initiatives more from the bottom up, that you can put something on the agenda. But then for governments, the engagement is actually one kind of layer, one dimension of what we offer. So we help them, as I said before, design the right participatory process for the context that they work in. But then, and the second one is a super important one, it's we help them manage the input that comes in. We help them actually anticipate on this, and we help them create a backlog of which input deserves feedback, and in the end to communicate the feedback. Because that is also one other key learning that we had, is no feedback, no citizen engagement, or at least not on a continuous basis. We really try to push our governments in creating an internal workflow, also a bit of a rule-based system on, all right, once ideas have over X votes, then it comes in your backlog of like, the feedback that you need to provide. If you don't provide this feedback, a citizen won't come back. If I, as a citizen, I have 200,000 options, what I'm going to do with my next 2 minutes, For me, it's going to be an investment if I go to CitizenLab, to the platform, and if I engage with other citizens or with the government, and when I share my thoughts. So it should also be rewarding, and the reward comes in the end from feeling the impact, seeing the impact, and of course not every single idea can be considered, but you can set rules in place to manage the expectations, and that is really key. And then the last thing is to, for our local authorities, to also understand the needs of the citizens. So what we try to do there is, let's take the example of a mobility plan. A lot of people start engaging on the different options for the mobility plan, and then we try to make it insightful for the government to see how are the preferences of younger people different from the preferences of older people. How are the preferences of people living in neighborhood X different from the people living in neighborhood Y. So they work with about 80 governments, as I said, all over the world. This is going from like big cities, city of Vancouver. I'm going to show you an example of that city. The Flemish government, the Walloon government, Danish government, up to the very smallest municipality that might be in your neighborhood. So yeah, we don't work with any museum yet. I don't have an example of that. But I can share you the example of city of Vancouver, what they do. So they use actually CitizenLab for participatory budgeting. So what they do is actually for housing. So they collected, or they installed a new tax called the empty homes tax, as you can see there. And they collected $30 million in revenues from there. And today they are redistributing the money that came in through that tax. So as you can see here, but I'm not sure that you can see it. Can you read actually what is on the screen? I don't guess so. So there the first phase says payment due, so people had to pay their taxes. But then in the second phase, people could ideate and give ideas for social housing. So and now people are voting, and the city council is deciding on which initiatives get taken. Another example is city of Marjan-Famenne, but I think I have way too many examples, so I think I will skip this one. They told me that I can make it participatory, so I would like to know also from you, how are you actually engaging your audiences? Do you have use cases of how you crowdsource input from your audience? Is there someone who can give me a cool use case of that? Anyone? Museums, how are you engaging your audiences?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, I'm Mathilde from
Hello.
the Bellevue Museum. We are working a lot with schools, and we are doing programs on citizenship, so it's really interesting. We just asked the teachers, after they come for a workshop, what they think about it, and what kind of topics they would like to do with their class on the next years, and then we try to focus on those topics that they have given us.
So more like person to person that you do it.
Yeah, well, we work with a survey, so really basic, but it works.
Okay. Any other examples of more online crowdsourcing of input? Like I was thinking about, because when I was preparing this presentation, I was thinking like, what are museums actually doing to engage with their audience to get feedback? I can imagine like for the program, etc. There might be ways, maybe later. So then another example, that was leading me to another example that we were doing a bit more in the cultural space. So everyone who's here from Belgium, I hope you've heard from Burgerkabinet, or on the Walloon side with it, the Cabinet Citoyen, which is actually like a citizen council. So this is a bit more on policy level. The two previous examples, or the previous example of Vancouver and the one I skipped of Marjan-Famenne, are really on local level, and that's what we feel works best, because as a citizen you care most about what is happening actually in your neighborhood, your streets, at the most local level. This is more about policy making, so it's less tangible, of course, but this is a great case of for the media policy of the Flemish government. There was so a Burgerkabinet, like a citizen council, and people could give their input on how they want to be informed, what is important when you consume news, what are key concerns there. And I took a screenshot of this one. Sorry, it's in Dutch, but I will translate for you. Transparency index stimulates vrije nieuwsgeving. Like new information coming in. The idea here was a citizen had the idea to actually get a transparency index on how easy it is to obtain information coming from your council. Like governments, they have archives of information, really like so much data and so many interesting things. But today it's pretty hard to, as a citizen, to inform yourself out of this ocean and this archive of data. So I thought this was a pretty cool idea, actually. So what are they doing exactly? Burgerkabinet is out of our platform, out of CitizenLab. They crowdsource input from citizens, as I said, on how they want to be informed. And then the minister called Sven Gatz, he's going to actually draft his policy guidelines, 10 policy guidelines, with the input of the citizens. I also want to show another example that we're not only working with like the cities or municipalities, but also with other public institutions. And there's a very clear link today here with the VUB. So the VUB, they are using CitizenLab to bring their student council online, which is also a very interesting idea. You can, of course, democratize your city council, but why not your student council? As a student, you have, or many of us have had probably the same experience that you want to do something for your community, you have ideas for your campus, but it's pretty hard to communicate them. And so that's what we're doing there. We're empowering actually all the students to also have a say on the policy making of the VUB, of the university. Lessons learned. So I'm going to finish with 3 lessons learned. First one, citizen empowerment. So there is no such thing as just like a citizen consultation platform. That's a mistake that we made in the beginning, that we start with some city platforms and that we did just consultations sometimes, and then you get the case that some cities, they are playing it so conservatively that they're asking about what should be the next street name. But that's not what we want. We understand now that we need both bottom-up and top-down engagement. Top-down is more city-initiated projects, and more bottom-up is that citizens can also put their own proposals on the table. This is really key for citizens to make it rewarding and interesting to come to the platform. Second one, if this will work, personalization. So make it relevant. Also for you, if you engage with your audiences, make it relevant, make the experience relevant. The way that we try to do that is by actually giving the option and asking about which topics interest you and where do you live. So based on where you live, you get to see all the projects that are happening around you. You can inform yourself about what's going on in your neighborhood, but also you get to see what are, for me, the ways that I can have an impact in my local community. So that is important to really go as granular as possible in the engagement and to also personalize the experience. And then the last one, and maybe you saw this one coming, it's about decision making. Make it transparent. So we make use of timelines. Every single process, participatory process, we lay out what are the different steps in the whole process, and we make clear how the council actually comes to decisions. So again, I cannot stress this enough, and this is also how I'm going to end this. Feedback is really key. For citizens, in order to be heard, we need feedback from a city council. We need them to assess the input of the citizens, and that is something we really try to push to them, give them timely the triggers, and get the feedback to look back towards the citizens. So I want to thank you very much.